Hey, co-reporters, welcome back to my channel. Listen, I just tuned into the Vial Files podcast featuring Marshall Glaze this morning as I was getting ready to shoot my videos for you today. And let's talk about it, shall we? So on the podcast, Marshall talked about being engaged in the past. See, it was never brought up on the show. Usually if someone's been engaged in the past or married in the past, it is something that's mentioned. I'm sure he mentioned it to Jackie, of course, but it's not something that made it past the editing room floor. And so you and I, for example, were not privy to this sort of information, which I was like, oh, damn it. I would have loved to have known that, even though it doesn't really change anything for me. It's just interesting, kind of like tidbit, fun fact sort of thing. So anyway, Marshall said on the podcast that he was engaged when he was 23 years old. And do you guys remember that major panic attack or meltdown that Jackie suffered in Mexico, when she was freaking out about having to go back home to her family and that quote unquote SHIT? Well, it came out after the show when she did an interview with Entertainment Weekly that she was freaking out because her father has been battling cancer and she is someone who does a lot of caretaking for him and her mother as well, I believe. And so one thing that really stuck out to me in this podcast was when Marshall said that he had no idea. So in the podcast, not in the podcast, but in the pods, when they're trying to get to know each other, all their deepest secrets and stuff, and like decide if they want to marry someone and whatnot, Jackie never thought to mention, hey, my father is battling cancer. And not only that, but when she was having that meltdown in Mexico, she didn't tell him at that point either that it was because she was freaking out because she's got the weight of the world on her shoulders as she takes care of her father who's battling cancer. Again, another thing that really just stuck out to me as kind of odd. I don't know if that's something that's odd to you guys as well. Perhaps it could be said that she didn't want it to appear on the show, but listen, you gave an interview to Entertainment Weekly directly after. So it's not like you wanted to keep it a secret or anything like that. And I don't know, something about it was just odd to me, to be honest with you, especially if you are in the midst of getting married to somebody and whatnot. They should know this sort of stuff, in my opinion, especially if you have like a sort of financial obligation to other people, because that impacts their life as well. But I digress. When it comes to his ex-fiancee, Jackie, Marshall says that her personality completely changed when they did the honeymoon situation in Mexico. Like, she seemed so deep in the pods, but as soon as they got to Mexico, she starts acting like she is on a drunken spring break vacation instead of being there to build a bond with her fiance and future husband. And so it really turned him off how much she was drinking and just wilding out and whatnot. Apparently her mom called her at some point, and that kind of led to the meltdown that we saw here. Maybe the mom called Jackie to tell her that her dad wasn't doing so well or anything like that. But that was something that Marshall did bring up, although he didn't want to mention what was actually legitimately said in the conversation. He said that that was Jackie's story to tell at the end of the day. And speaking of that, I would love to see Jackie do her own episode of the Vial Files. I think that could be quite interesting. Do I trust her? Do I believe that she would be 100% honest? No, not necessarily. But I don't really trust anyone to be 100% honest. In fact, I don't think Marshall was 100% honest in his interview with Nick Vial either. We will get into that a little bit later, but I see him after this podcast. I feel like more and more that he is someone just really wants to be liked. Like, he will betray himself to be liked. And we saw that play out in his relationship with Jackie. But I felt a lot of it in this interview with the Files as well. But anyway, let's just we're getting off topic there, but let me just bring it back down to his situation with Josh. Do you remember that guy that Jackie has decided to kind of get in a relationship with? They've been together for over a year now. They're living together and whatnot. But when it comes to Marshall being upset at Josh issuing an ultimatum to Jackie, either pick me or I pack my bags up and go, it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And Marshall wanted to clarify. He's like, listen, I know Josh technically didn't owe me anything, but at the end of the day, he was like my best friend in the pods. You've seen my relationship with Brett. Like, you see how close I am with that man. My relationship with Josh was exactly that. Like, we hit it off like crazy. I was like leaning on him for advice about my relationship with Jaquelina, and he never once thought to tell me that he was in love with the same girl either. I'm sorry, y'all, but I found that creepy too. Like, it's weird that someone would like just be all up in your face about this and not think to tell you, especially if they consider themselves to be one of your friends as well. I don't think Brett would ever do something like that. Brett would never, ever, y'all, ever. But yeah, so I did see where Marshall was coming from with that, because again, it gives me the heebie-jeebies, the idea that someone is just like listening into your stuff and not pouring their own stuff into the friendship, if you know what I mean there. And not only that, but apparently Josh pulled the same stunt with another woman. He was also vibing with another girl, and she, like Jackie, was torn between two men. And in order to kind of like force her hand, apparently Josh said the same thing to her, which is, I'm packing my bags and leaving if you do not pick me. So I could see like why Marshall would have been upset about him like manipulating the women like that. He also says that he doesn't understand why Jackie was complaining about a lack of intercourse, hunching in their relationship. He's like, listen, girl, I'm a freak. I wanted to bang you, but you had some feminine issues. And the feminine issues that he is referring to are a yeast infection. In those leaked text messages, when Jackie was calling Marshall soft, a teapot, questioning his sexuality and whatnot, she told her friends that she was having a yeast infection, and that's why they were not sleeping with each other. So I'm with Marshall. Like, girl, if you are battling that, obviously we're not banging. So why are you now upset with me that I'm not banging you? Like, that's really odd at the end of the day. Like, what does that have to do with aggression? Should I aggressively stick it into your infected, you know what I mean? Like, let yourself heal. I don't understand that either. Now, he also says that he doesn't understand why Jackie didn't respect him as a man when he did everything for her. And this is where I get into like the kind of like almost like desperation or whatever of Marshall, or like to be liked or to be loved or whatever. So when he starts listing all the stuff that he was doing for this woman with nothing in return, I was like, dude. So he's like, listen, I would cook for her. I would clean. I would do my laundry. I was planning the wedding practically on my own. And he was talking about how he would work from home specifically to make sure that he got all this stuff taken care of for this woman. I'm like, dude, you are doing too damn much. Okay. And not only that, but do you guys remember when they were sitting there in this breakup scene, like he tells Jackie that like he hasn't asked anything from her or whatever, and he doesn't want it. I'm like, dude, in a relationship, you do have to have your own sets of needs and boundaries. And like you not like developing that for yourself, I think it speaks to an issue that needs to be healed. I feel like that is a trauma response. I don't know what it's a response to, but that to me is a little bit like, I don't want to say frightening, but worrying. Like, I feel like, dude, you need to kind of develop a higher sense of self-worth than that, in my personal, humble opinion. Again, like the whole like choosing to work from home just to take care of all of this stuff. Like, I'm sorry, like Jackie can get home and clean up a little bit too. Jackie can help you cook. Jackie can help you plan the wedding. Like, you know, what would stop Jackie from doing all of the same things that you're doing? Like, I don't think a relationship needs to be carried by one person at all. Now, he also, again, like he seemed really happy just doing all of this for nothing in return. And to me, that is a little bit worrisome. So he says that when he went back home after like the comments from Jackie telling him that he needs to be more aggressive and questioning his manhood and stuff, he says that he did go home to his own apartment for 2 days because he needed space to process everything. And that he did tell Jackie ahead of time that that was exactly what he was going to do, and the amount of time that he was going to be gone for, because he needed time to process and decide if the relationship was still worth it to pursue or not. And he just didn't want to like say like the wrong thing that he would regret later on. I'm like, I don't know that you need like a whole 2 days for that in this sort of a situation where it's already like a very condensed timeline. When asked why he kept fighting for this relationship that seemed just so toxic and one-sided, Marshall says that it was because he saw a lot of potential in Jackie. And by potential, he means all of his own past issues that he overcame. And he was projecting that onto her, that like he could like use his own experience overcoming these insecurities or these issues to help her overcome them and whatnot. And it's like, well, it's great that you want to be Captain Save-A-Ho and whatnot, but like, if she does not want to and she does not realize that these are issues for herself, you cannot save her, right? At the end of the day. And second of all, she didn't ask for you to save her. So the fact that you chose to get into a relationship with someone because you thought you can save them, like already is kind of like a bad start. You kind of have to just accept people where they are. And then obviously you advance together, but like it should not start on the basis of, oh, you were a great project for me to come here and fix up at the end of the day. Right. So like an example of this kind of like savior mentality or savior complex, I do have like a full-blown video about this. It's entitled Marshall's Red Flags or whatever. Go ahead and check it out on my channel if you want more of my thoughts on that. But an example of this that he mentioned in the podcast that we did not see on the show. And Nick Vial even called him out for this. So he starts talking. He's like, oh, like Jackie, when we were in Mexico for the honeymoon, she started like studying for this anesthesiology text or exam that she was going to do in order to help assist or administer that moving forward. And so when I saw her studying, I told her, wow, like, why do you only want to stop at being like an assistant? Why don't you go ahead and try to study to be an anesthesiologist? And so me personally, if someone told me that I'm studying hard for something and they're like, oh, I see you doing this or whatever, but like, why aren't you doing that? I'd be like, well, damn, let me do this first. Like, who told you I want to do that? Right? Like Jackie told him, construction, that she did not want to be an anesthesiologist. And there's so many reasons why she wouldn't want to, right? Maybe she doesn't want to do the extra years of schooling, that take on the extra debt. Maybe she has a better work-life balance as an assistant than as an actual anesthesiologist. There are a whole lot of possible reasons. So I don't know that it was a very great question to ask off the bat like that. Like when someone is already studying for a stressful thing and they're, nervous and they already feel accomplished and proud of themselves for taking this step, because she was already in her career. She was already upgrading at this point. So why don't we just celebrate the upgrade instead of trying to like already push for the next thing, right? So that is something that Nick Vial told him. He was like, I used to be like you, Marshall. I wanted to be everybody's hero and whatnot. But then I started realizing that some of the like my well-intentioned suggestions would come across as condescending. And so what I challenge you moving forward is to just accept people where they're at and congratulate them, because, maybe she saw that as insulting, you talking down to her and not thinking that where she's at is good enough. And I did enjoy the way that Marshall received that criticism. And I hope that he applies it moving forward, because I thought it was a great thing for Nick to tell him about himself and the way that things could kind of come across. Not everybody is looking for a guidance counselor or a this or a that. Like, let her take her career in her own hands. At this point, he barely even knew her anyway to be making these sorts of suggestions. But I digress. Now, let's get into the Josh situation again. So Marshall says at this point, he forgot that Josh was even a factor, right? Remember, there was a love triangle, but Jackie had assured him that everything was good. It was him. And when they came back from the honeymoon situation, they all got their phones back. They went to the Instagrams and saw each other for the first time. And so they're looking at these other people that they were talking to, this, that, and the other, just reacting to their physical appearances. And apparently, Jaquelina Thumbelina, when she would see photos of Josh, would be like, ew, oh my God, I can't believe I was talking to that man. What? And so Marshall really thought that like he had nothing to worry about when it came to Josh, of course, with that sort of a reaction. It wasn't until Chelsea's birthday party where Jackie and Josh met in person for the first time. Listen, I guess Josh looks better in real life than he does in photos, but how often is that the case? I find that to be like the case 99.9% of the time, that people look better in motion. It's like, you ain't all that cute in these photos, but you might be better in real life. So let's give it a chance. And so that seems to have been it. And not only that, but just the feeling. Like sometimes people have like this aura, this energy in real life that's just so magnetic to you, right? And so I guess that is something that Josh had that Jaquelina did not experience through the Instagram photos. Now, let's get into the cheating allegations. Remember, on the show, they made it look like Jaquelina had cheated on Marshall. She chose to go on the date with Josh during the tux fitting without telling Marshall and whatnot. There was still no relationship. He thought he was going to marry her. Well, Marshall clears that up. He says, no, the timeline was a little bit skewed, but it begs the question of why Marshall was wearing the exact same outfit that he wore to the tuxedo fitting and why they were talking about that as if it happened that day. But it doesn't surprise me either, because reality producers are shady. The whole point is to stir up drama and to misrepresent things. That's why when you sign up to be on one of these shows, you have to sign a document saying that you acknowledge that you can be misrepresented at liberty, right? And so I guess that is something that happened there. But that doesn't like take Jaquelina completely off the hook, apparently, because in the podcast, Marshall says that he suspects that there was another time actually that Jaquelina actually cheated on him. According to Marshall Partial, one day he was minding his own tender loving business when his fiance Jaquelina comes up to him and says, listen, baby, my dad fell down the stairs and broke his arm. I need to go to the hospital and be with him. This is horrible. And so thoughtful Marshall goes, oh, baby, of course, go. Handle it. I'll be here when you need me. Okay. Like, I'm so sorry. And according to him, Jackie proceeds to take her time, march upstairs, get her makeup done, put together her hair, put together a nice, cute outfit. And he's like, well, why are you doing all that? To go visit your dad in the hospital who just fell down the stairs? You don't seem pressed. You don't seem this. You don't seem that. I think that she secretly went out to go and see Josh because she was acting so weird that day and when she came back as well. I'm like, listen, your intuition never lies. So maybe he's right. We can't confirm, but that intuition is strong. Okay. So it is what it is at the end of the day. And hindsight is always 2020. Now, can we get into the coffee date again? So Josh is like, okay, well, even though Jaquelina did not like kind of like go behind my back on the coffee date while I was doing the tuxedo thing, it doesn't matter because a couple days after like being with me, here she is getting with another guy, starting a relationship, kissing and stuff. It made me feel like she never once cared for me and like it's still bad anyway. Which I get, obviously. I would feel the exact same way, but here's the thing. Love is Blind is a different beast, right? This is something about a very condensed timeline. It's all about making it on the TV show, this, that, and the other. And let me say this before y'all get in my comments. If you support Bliss and Zach, then you've got to support Jaquelina and Josh in that it's okay that like they realize that one relationship does not work out. They have another strong connection that they want to pursue in the limited time that they're able to pursue it. So for that reason, I can't really judge Jackie for deciding to go for Josh so quickly, right? Like all of the emotions must have like come flooding back from like their deep talks, allegedly deep talks anyway, in the pods and whatnot. And so she decided to just go ahead and follow her heart on that. And listen, there's not really that much you can do after that, right? At that point, again, it's similar to the Zach situation. He got treated horribly by Irina at their honeymoon and whatnot. And so he decided to leave and go ahead and try with his other match. And that worked out. Spoiler alert, they ultimately wind up getting married. So why not, right? At the end of the day. Now, Marshall also, when it comes to the ring, listen, I said this in my initial episode recap, and I'm going to say it again. I'm sorry, but I felt like Marshall asking for the ring back was a little bit tacky. Okay. He did not pay for that ring. He claims he wants it back for sentimental value. I'm sorry, but I think he and Jaquelina both want it back as part of a pissing contest to be the final I won sort of a situation. They both have big egos, in my opinion. And this is something that their egos were both fighting over. You keeping a ring from a girl who did you dirty is not like some kind of nice sentimental souvenir situation, especially considering the fact that you didn't even pay for or buy the ring. So what are you going to do with it, Marshall? I think you were going to pawn it the same way that I think that Thumbelina is going to go ahead and pawn it as well. She claims she still has it, but listen, she went and got it appraised. So just you wait. That thing is going to be pawned. Maybe she's going to autograph the box or something like that for anyone who cares about her in that capacity. And the rest is history. Even like Zach didn't ask Irina for the ring back after she treated him like garbage. You know, I'm sorry. Not sorry, actually, but I felt like it was tacky for Marshall to even ask. It's not your ring, bro. Now, again, I gotta say, like the interviewer asked him how he felt about Jackie and Josh's relationship and whatnot, and how they were like holding each other at the reunion, and he claims that he's happy for them. This is like, again, in line with like my whole, like, I don't know. I feel like Marshall really puts on in order to be liked and in order to be praised and whatnot, because he claims to be genuinely happy for these people. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but they did you dirty just over a year ago. It's okay to still be hurt. It's okay to say that you want them to get their karma, or to say that you feel nothing for them at all, but to pretend that you feel genuinely happy that someone that you consider to be one of your best friends went and did this to you. And then someone that you wanted to marry has turned around and backstabbed you and is trying to make the world see you as a bigot. I'm sorry, but I don't believe it. It's giving fake, toxic positivity at the end of the day. And it's just not realistic. And I don't know. I don't know why some people are so afraid to just be honest and be themselves. I know that like it can get you some pushback and feedback on social media, but at the end of the day, it's not anything rude or mean or whatever. Like it's just your truth. And I think it's a more realistic truth than the whole, oh, like they both did me so dirty and they're both trying to destroy me, but I'm happy for them. I think it's great that they're in love. Like, sorry, I'm not buying it. Give me a break. Okay. Now, remember the leaked text messages that came out? Jaquelina and her friends were accusing Marshall of being a little bit sweet, of being a little bit of a teacup or something like that, a pot of tea, whatever they say. And so he's like, listen, I was not surprised because those were things that Jaquelina had been saying to me throughout our relationship. Anyway, I was like, this girl has been saying this type of stuff to you throughout your relationship, and you're at home asking your boss if you can work from home so you can cook, clean, and wash her dirty drawers and plan the wedding exclusively because she can't be bothered with it. And you never once went, I don't think this girl's into me. I'm sorry, but like, it's giving Mark from season 1. It's giving Nancy from season 3. It's giving delusional, and it's giving a little bit slow. Okay. Like, what is that, dude? He's like, I thought she was just joking. Really, Marshall? Please. Please. Now, when Nick asks him if he thinks that Jaquelina is a toxic person, Marshall says, no, I don't think she's a toxic person, but I think she's got toxic tendencies. And so Nick is like, okay, well, what is the difference between a toxic person and toxic tendencies? Why don't you describe to me what a toxic person is? And so Marshall goes, I think a toxic person is someone who's got like a lot of unhealed things, and they won't take accountability. They don't want to work or challenge themselves to be better or anything like that. And so Nick is like, okay, well, what are toxic tendencies? So he goes, it's all of that, and someone who won't like take steps to better themselves. So it's the same thing. Right. And then he's like, I don't want to label people. I don't label people. But if I had to label, I would say that Jackie is unwilling. She's an unwilling person. So then Nick's like, oh, really? What does unwilling mean? And he goes, it's someone who has like negative, almost toxic kind of traits about themselves, and they're unwilling to better themselves or move forward. It's like, well, that's the same description you gave for a toxic person or a person with toxic tendencies that isn't toxic. It's like you were just talking because you do not want to tell the truth about how you really feel about this girl, because you don't want people to say mean things about you or whatever. You want people to see you a certain kind of way. Like, it's just very inauthentic, in my personal humble opinion. Okay. Now, he and the hosts of the podcast all thought it was really messed up, by the way, for Paul. Remember that guy who was engaged to Dolly Parton Jr.? Where's that picture of Paul? As he was leaving his ex-bride's bridal suite, he touches her bridesmaid on the hip to booty area to get her out of the way, which, by the way, is so annoying. Just go. You don't need to like touch. You know, that happened to me at the club. I was minding my own business at the club. Remember, I went to Annecy this weekend. I was in Geneva and Annecy, and me and my friends, we were dancing. And then when people want to go through, and we had like a clear area, we always like to be in a space that's not too claustrophobic. Guys would still be touching you up on the back and stuff. It's like, listen, I'm sweating back there. Don't touch me. Anyway, he said it was really effed up for Paul to be touching that girl like that. But he doesn't want to talk about it further. He said, let the internet streets handle it at the end of the day. He doesn't want to get in trouble with that guy. Now, Marshall, by the way, is currently dating a girl, but he doesn't know how to navigate this new life as a famous person and introduce her to the public because she's a private person. Here's an idea, Marshall. Don't post photos and videos of her. There you go. It's really that freaking simple, right? In my opinion. Like, he acted like he was so just like tortured by this decision, but it really is as simple as simply not posting photos and videos of this girl. There you go. You don't even have to acknowledge that you're dating anyone. There's so many people who do this successfully. Issa Rae, you never see her man. That guy who plays Lawrence on the show, Jay Ellis, you never see his wife. Like, it's simple. Okay. But here's the thing with Marshall. Marshall really likes being famous right now. Okay. He posts more TikToks than anybody on the cast. He posts more Instagram stories than anybody on the cast. And so maybe he's kind of like frustrated that the girl does not really want to be involved in that sort of stuff right now. I don't know, but it's just, And Nick kind of sniffed it out too. He's like, listen, Marshall, like, if you were not ready, I would totally get it after all that you went through. But it kind of sounds like the way you're describing this relationship, you were not all that emotionally available. And if that's the case, maybe it's best to just like kind of cut it loose, or we'll make it really clear to this woman at the end of the day. And so Marshall claims he's always emotionally available, which, I'm sorry, it's a lie. Okay. Like, whenever you get out of like a relationship, especially a hard one, I think we all go through a period of emotional unavailability while we kind of navigate our feelings and our hurt in those things. So like again, this is just very inauthentic. I don't know why. Like, this guy is just so obsessed with like trying to sound perfect in order to be liked constantly. To me, it just seems so fake and just like, I don't love it. Okay. I have to go back and watch all these episodes again for my usual like character analyses, but I'm sorry, but this whole perfectionist, like savior, toxic positivity stuff is just not it for me. It seems like exhausting to be around. Now, Here's by the way, Marshall also claimed that he had no idea what Love is Blind was when he was approached. I'm not sure I can believe it, to be honest, because he did admit that he had a Netflix account. And it's like, if you had Netflix, especially during the pandemic, you know what Love is Blind is. Like, that was pushed like crazy. It was the #1 show for ages. Like, they were everywhere. I don't believe it at all. Okay. And by the way, I think it's weird that he's claiming that he doesn't know how to be a public figure and whatnot. Like, it's really just, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. Now, that basically is the way that the podcast wraps up. I thought that Nick Vial gave Marshall a lot of good advice about like trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed, or needing to encourage people instead of judging them and trying to get them to do things that like they do not feel like doing. And also like just like not rushing to date if you don't feel like you're ready for it either. I thought it was a great conversation. I thought it revealed a little bit more about Marshall, his dynamic with Jackie. I'm still quite like, I don't know, like, is weirded out the right word? I still kind of feel odd for him that like he was engaged to this girl who never once told him that her dad had cancer and she had to take care of him. And like, you know, this is obviously a huge part of her life. So I found it very odd that she would go on the show and not disclose this. I would think that it would be an important thing to kind of mention, but I digress. What did you guys think of the rundown? Whether you listen to the full podcast or whether you're just listening to my recap, I would love to know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Is Marshall a little too obsessed with trying to come across perfect? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And as usual, we'll chat. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.